guys, it's Teenage Marvel Fan back with another video, and in this video I will be doing my spoiler review for Spider-Man Far From Home. So if you have not seen Spider-Man Far From Home yet, then go check out that movie, and then come back and watch this video because this video does contain spoilers. I'm going to be basically spoiling the whole movie in this video. So if you haven't seen the movie, or you don't want to know what happens, then leave this video. Alright, so you have been warned. So, this is a great movie. It's so diverse. Like, not only the cast is diverse, but then also, the type of movie, because there's action, there's romance, there's mystery, there's humor / comedy. There's a lot of comedy, and that's kind of a must-have when it comes to Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's known for, making quips while he's in the middle of battle, even though that makes no sense, but it's just part of his character. So Spider-Man movies have to have comedy, and there is comedy in this movie, and a lot of it, and most of it works really well. So as you can see on the screen here, off to the left, you can see the different categories. So first off, the aftermath of Endgame. So of course, a few months ago we found out that Avengers Endgame would not be the end of the Infinity Saga. Spider-Man Far From Home would, and most people were confused by that. But now after seeing the movie, we know why this is the end to the Infinity Saga and not Endgame. Because this really wraps it up, kind of. It's the end of the Iron Man story, basically. Because Iron Man's dead, so, even though he's dead, he has the large presence in this movie, because he gives Edith to Peter. And so it basically wraps up the whole story that started off in Iron Man. And so Peter goes on a European vacation, and the European vacation doesn't go as planned, because some places that they went to were planned and some of them weren't, because it was just like Nick Fury wanted Peter to go to these locations, so then he pulled some strings and got some free tickets to go there. So he just made everything work out the way he wanted to, because he's Nick Fury. Well, actually, it's Soren. Talos. Soren's Talos. Talos' wife. That's kind of weird to get that mixed up. But anyway, so Nick Fury and Maria Hill were Skrulls, of course. But I'm not going to go into too much detail on that in this video, because I'm making separate videos breaking down both the mid and end credit scenes. So stay tuned for those. And so Spider-Man's suits. Spider-Man has a couple different suits in this movie. Of course, he starts off in the Iron Spider suit in New York, and he's probably still wearing that because to honor Tony, and also because, it's bulletproof and it's the most useful of all his suits. But then you see that he still has his homecoming suit, but he doesn't want to take it to Europe with him, but then Aunt May packs it for him anyway. But that actually gets destroyed because it was in the hotel, and the hotel gets destroyed by Hydro Man, I believe. Or maybe it was Molten Man. I think it was Hydro Man. There's a lot of complicated stuff to talk about here. Like, Hydro Man wasn't really Hydro Man, but whatever. So yeah, the suit. So the homecoming suit is destroyed as far as I can tell. And then the Iron Spider suit, that's still in New York. Then Peter gets the stealth suit, which Ned nicknames the Night Monkey, which is a pretty hilarious thing, because he was kind of like a spider monkey. So, yeah. And then he uses that until he of course, gets hit by the train by Mysterio, and then he ends up in the Netherlands, and he's in jail, and then the guard there is just wearing it, and Peter doesn't care about that suit, so he just leaves it with the guard, and the guard's like, I caught the night monkey. Yeah, he's so proud of himself, but he really shouldn't be. And then finally, Peter makes his upgraded hero suit on the Stark jet, and then, of course, that's an homage to Spider-Man's original design with the red and black, and it was a really cool suit and stuff like that. But there's not really much to talk about when it comes to the suits. But the three relationships that blossom in this movie. First of all, Happy and May. That was something we kind of hinted at in the first trailer, and that was kind of fun to see. They make a nice couple, but it was kind of funny at the end when May was like, "Oh no, it was just a summer fling," and then Happy's like, "What? I thought we were actually dating." So yeah, who knows if they're actually dating now or if it was just a summer fling. Probably had an argument after that. But then there was also Ned and Betty, and I really like Ned and Betty together because it's a relationship that happened in the comics, and Ned is one of my favorite characters in these movies because he's so hilarious. And then Betty, well, she's hot, so of course I like them together. But the sad thing is that they break up in the end. And I don't get that. I wish they stayed together, because then it's kind of like the whole thing was pointless. And it was made out to be more of a joke than anything else. Because, like, in the first movie, Peter was abandoning Ned so that he could be Spider-Man. But in this movie, Ned's abandoning Peter so that he can be with his girlfriend. And so, yeah, I really wish they would have stayed together, though. And then, of course, there's Peter and MJ, who end up together in the end, and I like the scene on the bridge when Peter's about to tell her how he feels, and then she's like, "You're Spider-Man." What? And then things get complicated. But also I like that when they were walking, their hands were getting close, but then they quickly moved them away because things got awkward. Because that's just how it is in real life, like with high school students. Like, everything is awkward with teenagers. Of course I know that because I am a teenager, and everything is awkward. But they really portrayed that well in this movie. So that's something I'm really happy about. And, so yeah. That was kind of the driving point of the movie, though, for the Peter side of things, not on the Spider-Man side of things, because his whole plan for the European vacation was to tell MJ how he felt, and he had such a romantic plan. Like, one of my friends from school, he has a girlfriend, but he's not good at, like, doing the right thing. Like, he needs some advice and help with relationship. So I kind of like give him advice on everything and like tell him what to do so that he can stay together with his girlfriend. And then Peter's plan here is exactly the kind of plan that I would come up with. Like, take her to the most romantic place on earth, the Eiffel Tower in Paris, the city of love. Like, that's a great spot. And then buy her the glass necklace of the Black Dahlia because that's her favorite flower. It's like a great plan. And then just tell her how you feel up on the Eiffel Tower. That is an amazing plan, and I love it. Although they didn't actually end up going to Paris, so it didn't really work out too well. But he still gave her the flower, and, you know, that was all cool. And then, of course, the kiss at the end. I like how at first, like, it was just a really quick, like, 1 second kiss. and they did that like 2 times, because that's how it is for teenagers. Like, if they've never kissed anyone before, that's how they're gonna do it, because they don't know how to actually kiss, so, because they probably didn't have experience. Like, judging by Peter, he doesn't have many friends, so, probably the only girl that he's dated, kind of, was Liz, but, you know, she's in Oregon now, but she'll probably return for the 3rd movie, maybe. And then, of course, MJ, you know, she's just like an emo girl, so don't think she's kissed anyone. So this is kind of their first kiss, so that was nice to see. And now that I've talked about all that, I'm going to get into talking about all the characters. So first up, Spider-Man, of course. Like I said, he has to balance his life between Peter and Spider-Man. And I liked his plan and everything. And I like that he wasn't able to accept the responsibility. Like, when Tony died, he received Edith the glasses, he realized that he wasn't responsible enough, and that he didn't want to take on the responsibility. He wanted to just be Peter and just enjoy his vacation and tell the girl of his dreams how he felt, and he didn't want to keep the glasses. So then, of course, he trusted Mysterio, which was a bad idea. Peter reads some comics, which, yeah, if he did that, then he would know that Mysterio's evil. But yeah. So, it's a bad idea trusting Mysterio, but it was because he didn't want the responsibility, so then he just gave them to Mysterio, and that was a bad idea. And there's not really much else to say about Peter, because I've already talked about him a lot. But Edith, the glasses, they're pretty awesome. The things that they can do, like, he almost killed Brad with one of them, with one of the drones, and that's pretty crazy. But something else about Edith that I'd like to bring up is actually a question that I have for you guys that hopefully you could answer down in the comments below. So it's about Mysterio, but also Edith. So, the whole time Mysterio was trying to get Edith from Peter. But why did he really need Edith? Because, Edith was the one that controlled the drones and stuff like that. And the elementals were made out of drones and projectors. So if Mysterio didn't get Edith until after he defeated Cyclone, Hydra Man, Molten Man, and Sandman, then how were those created? Because supposedly those were drones and projectors, but if the drones were controlled by Edith, and he didn't have Edith, then how did he make the elementals? And then, like, if he was able to do that without Edith's drones, then why did he even need Edith if he could already do it? So this may just be a plot hole, maybe not. So let me know down in the comments below if you have an answer to that question, because I'm really stumped on that one, and I'd like to see if there's an actual answer or if it's just a plot hole. But moving on to talking about MJ, her character changed a lot from the first movie. In the first movie, she was a smaller, background character. She seemed very emo. But the thing I don't like about her and Peter's relationship is that in the first movie, they kind of acted like they hated each other. But in this movie, all of a sudden, Peter just likes her, and then MJ likes him. I did that in my last video, in my non-spoiler review. I accidentally called Peter her, and I just did it again. So yeah. So I don't like that they just completely changed personalities in this movie, but it had to happen for the story, and it worked well with it. And you could argue the point that actually, you couldn't argue the point that maybe they spent some time together, since we've seen him in Homecoming, because right after Homecoming happened, Peter went to space and then he got dusted. So, hasn't seen her since Homecoming, really. And then Aunt May, I like the fact that she was part of the movie's way of describing the aftermath of Endgame, because, like she said, she was holding a charity, and when she snapped back into existence, when she went back to her apartment, there was a new lady living there, because of course 5 years had passed, and the rest of the world moved on, and she thought that she was a ghost. And that was a nice joke, but also, it's kind of serious, because, say that half the population of the world snaps away, and then they reappear 5 years later. It's not like people aren't going to move into those people's houses, because it's not like they're just going to... Because they didn't know that they were coming back. They thought that they were gone for good. So, of course, more people moved in, and Aunt May had the charity raising money for the homeless people, because a lot of people were homeless after they came back from the snap, because people had taken their homes. And then Happy, that scene with Peter and Happy on the plane when Peter was making his new suit was so great. Like, it was a reference to Iron Man, because Happy opened up the lab and then Peter just got to work, and then that reminded Happy of Tony, and then he started playing Back in Black, because that was the song from Iron Man 2. So it was a huge reference to Iron Man. It was very touching, very emotional. But of course Peter's young, so he mistaked AC/DC for Led Zeppelin. But he's only 16 or 17, so I guess it's kind of understandable. But I'm only 13, and I know the difference, so I don't know how he doesn't. But anyway, Ned, I've kind of already talked about him. With him and Betty, I really like their relationship, and he's not really the guy in the chair in this movie, because most of his time, of course, is spent with Betty. So he doesn't really do too much in this movie. He has a much smaller role, and that's alright, because they kind of needed to put him on the back burner for this movie, because there wasn't really much else that he could do. But Nick Fury, I skipped Brad. So Brad, he was a nice addition to this movie. He was also a character from the comics. He dated Mary Jane Watson, aka MJ, for a little bit until Peter got her back. So, of course, that's references to the comics, so that was nice. But I felt like he kind of stole Flash's role. He was kind of like a replacement of Flash. Flash was still in this movie, but it's kind of like Brad was like the same character pretty much, but really overshadowed Flash. So that I didn't really like about it, and he was really a jerk to Peter. Plus it's kind of weird that he walked in the bathroom, and even if he thought Peter was hooking up with that sexy S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, like, why would he take a picture? It's weird to just have a picture on your phone of one of your classmates in their underwear. Like, that's weird. Like even if she showed that to MJ, she'd be more weirded out by Brad than she would by Peter. But then on to Nick Fury. I like that they made him into a Skrull and made it turn out that he was Talos, because it kind of made sense, because if this was the real Nick Fury, he wouldn't have believed that Mysterio was from another planet and that he was, trying to be a good guy and that these elementals were real. He would have done the research to find out that Quentin Beck worked for Tony Stark. So, I'm not going to go into too much more detail on Nick Fury, because of course I'm going to talk about him more in the post-credit scene breakdown. Whenever I do that, it's probably Might come out tomorrow or the day after, possibly. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that. Now, Dimitri. You may not remember Dimitri, but he is the guy that was working for Nick Fury, and he was the one that drove the kids from Venice to Prague. And yeah, so when everybody first found out that Numenakar had been cast as a character known as Dimitri, people automatically thought that he was going to be Chameleon, and that's what I thought as well, and also hoped. But unfortunately, there was no hints at him being Chameleon in this movie. But I still think he is Chameleon, because when Numenakar first was cast as Dimitri, he put a thing on his Instagram or Twitter, and one of the hashtags said #Chameleon, but he quickly deleted that, but people still saw it, so we basically know that he's Chameleon, and it's possible that he might be the villain in the next movie, or at least a villain, and I'll get into that when I get to the setup for Spider-Man 3. That's coming up soon on here. But yeah, I wish we at least saw more of him in this movie. But the Elementals, they were pretty awesome. Of course, they were also, like, the Elementals were a way to take classic Spider-Man villains, but make them cool, because, like, characters like Molten Man and Hydro Man, they're cool Spider-Man villains, and they're classic Spider-Man villains, but they're not powerful or evil enough to be a main villain of a movie, or, like, they wouldn't really make sense as a side villain either, and they were kind of cheesy, like, in the comics, but this was a way to make them cool, and I like the way that Flash went on BuzzFeed and said, like, according to some people, that the water elemental is Morris Bench, who fell off a ship, and the water thing exploded, and he turned into this giant water monster. Of course, that's a reference to Hydro Man, because Hydro Man was Morris Bench, and that's the character that this water elemental was based on. And then Cyclone, I wish that he was in this more. I don't really know too much about Cyclone the character, but we didn't get to see Mysterio fight Cyclone, because apparently he fought him before the movie even started. We got to see him a little bit when Peter discovered that everything was fake, and he found the projector, and we just saw a wind creature flying around, and it looked pretty awesome, so it would have been cool to see a battle with Cyclone, but we never got that, unfortunately. And Sandman was cool. He was only in it for a little bit. Molten Man, of course, was cool. But now on to the best part of the movie. Mysterio, of course. Like, nobody going into this movie believed that Mysterio was actually going to be a hero, because he's one of Spider-Man's most classic villains, and he's my favorite Spider-Man villain, so of course I knew that he wasn't going to be a hero, because, like, he's all about tricks and lying and illusions, so we knew that this was all fake. And that bar scene after Peter left, and after Peter gave Mysterio the Edith glasses and he left the bar, that turn in Jake Gyllenhaal's performance as Quentin Beck was so awesome. Like, when you first see the whole room, like, starting to pixelate, and then the hologram starting to fade, and then you see Mysterio turn around and he's just smiling with that evil smile. And at first I was a little confused when I saw that there were other people there, and I was like, oh, Mysterio's actually working with people? That's weird. But I'll get into that after I talk more about Mysterio, because his people that he's working with are really awesome. But like I said, that turn, and then he just, like, explains everything to his whole group, and basically explains everything to the audience, and his whole overall plan was pretty awesome. How he worked for for Tony Stark, and he was the one that created the barf tech, and then Tony just used it for a therapeutic thing, and he was really mad about that. And then on top of that, Tony Stark took credit for it. So of course Quentin is mad about that. But it was just so awesome. And even though this is a different origin story from the comics, I actually kind of like this better. And it is kind of similar to the comics because in the comics he was a failed actor. And in this movie, with the rest of Mysterio's crew, everyone had a specific job. And, of course, Quentin Beck was Mysterio, but he was kind of like an actor. Even though he was like a scientist and a tech guy, it would have been cool if like there was a line in the movie where he was Mysterio, and then he said, "Man, I'm glad I took that acting class in high school," because he was basically acting and pretending to be this hero warrior from another planet. Now on to the rest of his team, which is so awesome because it dives really deep into the history of Iron Man, because we know that Mysterio worked for Tony Stark, but then Mysterio's number one helper was actually in another movie. It was from the first Iron Man movie. The guy that Obadiah Stane yelled at, the guy that built the Ironmonger armor, he was working for Mysterio. And then all these other people were also working for Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, and they were all fired because he took credit for their work, and then they got mad about it, so then he fired them. So they all have a common enemy. But the thing that kind of didn't make sense is that they're all mad at Tony Stark, but he's dead. So that, like, there's not really anything they can do to get back at Tony Stark. So then what they decide to do is Mysterio tries to replace Tony Stark and Iron Man. So Mysterio is going to try and be the new Tony Stark, or the new Iron Man. And that's his whole goal. He wants to be the most famous superhero, because the Avengers, they're gone right now. They're disassembled. And he wants to make it look like he's the hero. And all of them are going to help him with that, because they're all mad at Tony Stark. And if everybody starts to like someone more than Tony Stark, then they'll be happy, I guess. But that illusion scene with Mysterio in the warehouse was so good. Best scene of the movie, without a doubt. Like, all the illusions that there were. Going into this movie, I knew that Mysterio would do some crazy illusions, and the two things that I hoped would happen was, number one, that Mysterio would make, like, multiple versions of himself and make it look like they were, like, duplicates of him, and that happened. And then the second one was when he would, like, grow to the size of a building, or, like, grow really tall, like maybe Giant Man, like that kind of thing. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but that's not too big of a deal. Like, I'm fine with that. But the other things that he did, like making Peter see Tony's grave, like, that was bad enough. But then Iron Man's zombie crawling up out of it and then flying towards Spider-Man, it's horrifying, especially for Peter. That was his mentor, and he's dead now. And like, it was just an awesome scene. And also, like, when Peter was looking around at the different mirrors and saw himself in all the mirrors, and then they just crawled out of the mirrors and jumped on top of him, just tackled him. It was awesome. And I'm pretty sure all of this was, like, done by CGI, and it looks pretty hard to do. And then there was even a scene that it was really quick and it was hard to see, but there was statues of Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, and Vision, because of course those are the 4 Avengers that died within Endgame and Infinity War. So in the beginning they had the school news thing doing an in memoriam thing for that. So there were the statues of them, and then, like, Mysterio basically wanted to make Peter feel like everything was his fault, and that they're dead because of him. Of course, that wasn't the reality, but he wanted him to feel like that. Now, the final battle is actually something that I'm disappointed about, because the final battle in every superhero movie is usually my favorite part, but in this movie, it was my least favorite part, and that's because it was not very entertaining. Like, Mysterio wasn't even in his Mysterio costume. He was just wearing a mocap suit and had, like, a plastic fishbowl thing on his head. Now, that makes sense because, you know, the whole actual Mysterio part was CGI and, you know, fake, and it was from projectors. But I wish he was at least wearing the suit, and he was just, like, sending drones to shoot Spider-Man. And then that's all that happened. Like, there wasn't really much there. And then Mysterio died because of a bullet from something that he was shooting. I mean, it's bad enough that he dies, but then he's the reason that it happened. Of course, I don't think that he's actually dead. But I'm going to make a video on that, explaining more in detail on how he could come back and stuff like that. So how does this movie set up Spider-Man 3? Of course, there's the post-credit scenes. So everybody knows Peter's identity now, everybody in the world. So I think that Kraven the Hunter will be the main villain, and that's because John Watts wants Kraven to be the main villain, plus every Spider-Man fan wants Kraven the Hunter to be the villain. I want Kraven the Hunter to be the villain, so I think he's going to be the villain. And then I mentioned earlier that Dimitri, aka Chameleon, could also be a main villain of the next movie. And I think that he and Kraven would work together, because in the comics, guess what? Kraven and Chameleon are half brothers. So in the MCU, they're probably brothers. So then they could be the main villains and team up. And of course, they know, along with everyone else in the world, that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So they could hunt him down at his house and do all that crazy stuff. And it would just be an awesome team up. But yeah. So I've talked about a lot here. This is a long video. I think it's my longest video ever. But that's because this is such an awesome movie. I definitely recommend seeing this movie. So go see this movie. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video, so I can bestow all my Marvel knowledge upon you.